Sustainability Initiative Liaison Committee. And we're a bunch of people. There's me, that Paul Chapman, Margot, Becky, Huda, Nikki, and Bob weren't on the screen at the moment. Actually, Zoom is a new part of our activity. We did a lot of it all through the pandemic with free conference calls, so we never saw each other. We just talked to each other. I'm going to start with a little bit of a definition on sustainability. I'm going to go even more quickly through these slides than I thought I was, but we will share them afterwards if you're interested. So the current definition really sort of started in 1987 with the Brundtland Report, talking about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future, and the balance of economics, environment, and social well-being. You can see the 17 UN things at the bottom. Next slide. Sustainability problems are complicated, and they need different viewpoints, different stakeholders to develop and implement solutions. Yale has resources, lots of different kinds of resources. And so we thought, well, if we can get the alumni, of whom there are many doing many things in the real world, including people like John Kerry and lots of other people, and we can better engage the sort of real world workers with the academics. That was part of what we were trying to do. We wanted to encourage the university to become a global leader in sustainability and to strengthen the network of alumni as they relate to the university, students, and faculty. Next slide. We started in 2019. In November of 2019, we presented at the Yale Environmental Sustainability Summit in New Haven. That's where several of us connected, and we really grew from there. We launched the committees, we launched a petition. We're very proud that we got more than 450 signatures from 6 decades of Yale College alums and at least one alum from every graduate or professional school. We wrote a private and collaborative letter to Yale leaders asking for environmental, action and leadership on environmental sustainability. We wanted it private and collaborative so that we wanted to work with them. We didn't want to make a big statement and have them mad at us. We've learned a lot about how institutions in general work, and Yale in particular, which isn't always fast or the way we think it ought to work, but that's where we are. We set up, and some of this we'll talk about, that we set up a sustainability fund, a mentorship program, and green blocks. We'll talk about that later. Sort of parallel with some of that, the YBG board formed. This is an older slide. I now know that was announced in November of 21. In 22, we attended reunions, and we've been very active with the Office of Sustainability. Next slide. As the board has come on and built a more robust rest of YBG, we've sort of focused ourselves back on the university. So the office, we look at the sustainability plan. We'll talk about that. Celebrating and publicizing their successes. I think one of the things I count as a win is that when we started in 2019, we thought, well, Yale's not doing anything. And then as we talked to people and learned, they were doing a lot of things, but it wasn't very well publicized. That's gotten a lot better. Office of Sustainability gets a lot of credit for that, and the administration as well. We are working on the funding side of things and coordinating with the programming committee. Next slide. I'm going to go through several of these pretty quickly. The Office of Sustainability, our fund, which we talk about later, basically funds students to do work. In fact, this BIRD initiative we did not fund, but it's the kind of work that that office is doing that we support. And there's more about that. I think there's a Green Blocks program about it. Next. The students also have just done a resilience planning workshop with campus and the city of New Haven. We hope to report back on that later when they get their report together. But that's, planning for climate change, sea level rise, which will definitely affect New Haven. Next. They've also, so I'm going to just jump to the next slide, Margo. So this is the work this is the product of the work of that previous slide, which is looking at the teaching and research that Yale professors are doing related to the UN sustainability goals. So health gets a lot, the public health has done a lot. Peace and justice, some of that is the law school, quality education, inequality, sustainable cities, lots of different things. We will figure out how to get these slides shareable, but they're not right at the moment. Next slide. They also collaborate with other universities. There's an Association for Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. They were early members of that and strong members. That organization also rates universities. Yale has gotten a gold one, and there's more to talk about there, but I'm not going to do it right now. Next. And another thing that we do is try to hold Yale accountable for their own sustainability plan. It's on the Office of Sustainability website, and we early in 22 we did a detailed response to their 2021 progress report, and complimented on them on what they were doing well, and took them to task on the stuff that they weren't doing what they said they were going to do. So I think it's helped the sustainability office to have somebody looking at it and letting the administration know, no, people are paying attention. You guys got to do this. Next.
And I see that Lindsay is putting information in the chat, Lindsay with the sustainability office. Thank you.
Yeah.
So another thing that we're involved with is the Planetary Solutions Project, which started in 2020 with a big symposium online at that time. We talked with their director, Casey Pickett, and we see this as a very important thing, because it's run out of the provost's office, which is the one place in the university that crosses the Yale College and all the graduate school and professional schools. So it's a real place for interdisciplinary work to come together, and for money that can easily cross boundaries. They funded, they're still growing and building themselves. They funded some sort of seed projects in 2022, 21 projects for more than 1.4 million. In 23, they've received 33 proposals. So we see this as a real opportunity to move forward, especially on the interdisciplinary front. Next slide. So this is this fund that I've been talking about. We launched it pretty early. It funds the Office of Sustainability. To date, we've raised about almost $60,000, but that's over 3 years. And to fund them at the rate, well, and early on, not so much was getting spent because of the pandemic and all of that. But really, to make it all work, we should try to raise 25,000 a year, and we're probably about 15,000 short for this year. In addition, the group that's been paying attention to this and working with the development office has a thing on our website that's Giving Green to Yale, and it mentions our Office of Sustainability Fund. It also mentions Planetary Solutions and the School of the Environment. So it gives people different choices, but still encourages them to give green to Yale. Next slide. We also started a mentoring program in terms of building that network. We think that's important. We had a great first year and had about 50 student and alumni pairs. And then one of the key committee members had another child and got a new job. And as a volunteer alumni group, we sort of fell down a little bit on that, but we've restarted work with Yale's Cross Campus, which has mentoring programs. And there's currently, so we would encourage you to go to Cross Campus, sign up if you aren't already, put YBG in your profile, and then look for the mentoring programs. There's two that in place already, Yale College to Yale College alums, and a graduate and professional school to graduate and professional school alums. They're just starting, and you would have seen it in the newsletter, alumni, general alumni to alumni program, and we're asking for volunteers to sort of beta test it, but you got to sign up by tomorrow. So if you're interested in doing that, look at the newsletter. There should be a link in there, and we're hopeful that this will work. It was a great thing as it went, but we didn't have the people power to keep it going. But we're committed to helping make this work in collaboration. So next, Hudita's going to talk about webinars. Next slide. Margaret. There we go. Hudita.
Yeah, hi. So this is an ad for Monday, March 20th, and it's our second webinar with Professor Rao from the School of the Environment, the YSE, and Don Lippert, CEO and founder of Elemental Accelerator in Hawaii. And Don is an alum of YSE, and the title is Renewable Energy. Our first event was February 23rd with Professor Esti from YSE and the law school, and he called in from Geneva, where he's consulting with the World Trade Organization. And our alum was Maria Ivanova, professor and dean of public policy at Northeastern University here in Boston. The title was What is Sustainability? And we had a very lively discussion, and they have quite different perspectives on sustainability as a concept and its history. And basically this whole first series, the 4 webinars this spring and fall, are an introduction to the basic concepts of sustainability. So just an aside, which I think is very positive, is that Maria was dance student at Yale 30 years ago, and they have a continuing collegial relationship. Dawn, who's going to speak on Monday, was Maria's student at Yale. So by Monday afternoon, we will have covered 3 generations of Yaleys in 2 events in less than 1 month. So all from the School of Environment, formerly the School of Forestry. And our next event, final one for this spring, is May 2nd, Environmental Equity and Health, with Professor Stan Vermunt, who was Dean of the Public Health School and is a professor there, and Professor Adunbi, an alum of anthropology, who's now at the University of Michigan. And he has a background in, he's written books on oil in Nigeria. So we have a vast array of expertise, very lively discussions, and we've been working very hard on this for over a year. In September, we'll have the final one of this particular series on biodiversity. We have Catherine Burns, our alum from the Nature Conservancy. And I believe, did she go to the School of the Environment also? I think so.
I think.
Anyway, and our faculty members not yet lined up. So that our aims are both general, to stimulate dialogue and community and to provide solid information from experts who have backgrounds and networks around the world, but it's also specific to generate some questions and ideas for us as a group to pursue among the vast array of sustainability's agendas and ideas. So the webinar program has been the heart of our programming for these first 2 years of the organization since the board was constituted, but we have a vast set of discussions and lines we're pursuing: the book club, the film club, the green blocks, which has also been going for a couple of years that Margot's been running, and so on. So it's so this is the perhaps the sort of academic heart of it, but there's a lot of other interesting stuff going on.
Okay, Margot, you ready to talk about green blocks?
Yeah, so with the alumni that have devoted their careers, who are in the webinars, there's also a person-to-person communication that we would like to have, where we're kind of crowdsourcing what are your ideas and lifestyles from every Yale alumni, student, faculty, and how they are reaching the Paris Agreement goals of reducing carbon and having a net zero life as much as possible. The more we share the information, the faster we can all change, because we're changing together. And all of it is with a global vision. So it's personal action, community events, global vision. And we share all that on the Green Blocks page. It's a web page of the website. This is what an article would look like. You click on the image and we see how New York City has changed its water system for heavier rains, more hurricanes, and where the water goes. They've also planted 1 million trees to take care of some of the issues. And so we have articles of some of the solutions that are happening in our neighborhood. A 1912 house was fixed up by Wendy Littlefield in Victoria to be an example, and was an example to the local university. So we're sharing these ideas so that we know more of how we can change our own homes and our own water systems in our cities. Oh, I just had it. There it is. So Green Blocks is also in preparation for Earth Day, putting out social media posts. There's 2 that you'll see, 1 a week, food waste and good ideas for how to make sure that we're not throwing away as much food. And if you share these ideas with your neighbors and your community and school parents, this will be a ripple effect, these ads that are coming out. In addition, we're spreading word about the bird collision research that's being done in Yale, all through Instagram posts, LinkedIn posts, and Facebook. And that will happen all the way up to Earth Day. Now, Earth Day, we have a grand explosion of events in April, which Salim and Hudita have talked about. In Chicago, we're on our 5th year of taking care of saplings in Gwendolyn Brooks Park on the south side that has a reduced overstory, and we need our canopy. And so we need to make sure these 50 trees in this one park are thriving as something to contribute to the south side of Chicago. Also, San Francisco is on its 2nd Earth Day event, where they took care of a garden, cleaned a garden last year. This year, they're going to plant a tree. So we're also kind of putting feelers out there for what you would like to do this year or next year. It could be as simple as bringing a group out bird watching, or starting a backyard garden, or a tub of lettuce. So, and then sharing that with other people.
Margot, just to, I wanted to make sure everybody knows, we're going to send out another newsletter right at the beginning of the month, highlighting all of the Earth Day related activities that we know about.
It's a very exciting month. It's really going to be quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll pass the ball to Anne again.
Okay, well, this is just our summary. We're going to keep working. We hope you'll join us, either us or other Yale Blue Green committees, which include programming and Green Blocks, and Maureen and Chip. I know I've left some off, but anyway, we'd love to have other people engaged and doing stuff.
We're always looking for volunteers.
So questions?
Just a giant thank you for all of the support on helping fund these really awesome student initiatives. You know, I feel like we've gained a lot of traction with some of these projects. You saw I linked the SDG project in particular, which has a really fun interactive data visualization. This is a slight aside, but one that I think worth highlighting. If you are interested in seeing more about some of the sustainability data that we have a whole data hub We're really trying to increase transparency and interactivity with our sustainability data to make sure people are more aware of what we have and what we do. So, and to your point, trying to kind of ramp up the efforts around the engagement that we're doing and making sure people know who we are and what we do. So I can put a link to that in the chat as well. But beyond that, yeah, it's just been so wonderful to have the support and partnership of this group and the SILC team. And I'm just really excited to see where we can go next.
So just to add to what Margot was saying about the committees, the way that Yale Blue Green is now structured, following the many years that Lauren did so much work and SILC did so much work, we're trying to really integrate into, you know, kind of a new structure with the Yale Blue Green board and SILC becoming the part of Yale Blue Green that liaises with the university. And so that's why the word liaison is in the committee's name. And so all of those things that you just heard about, which I'm excited about too, Lindsay, and I think this partnership can only strengthen and grow as we go forward. And I'm excited about everything that it seems like from the outside, it seems like sustainability has kind of exploded at the university. I mean, there's so much going on. All of the fundraising events seem to be focused on sustainability themes, and there's just kind of a constant acceleration, which is great because that's exactly what we need. So going back to the structure, so we have the board, and then we have the liaison committee, SILC, which is really doing a ton of work. And then we have the programming committee, and again, a shout out to Margot and Hudita for sharing that. And then with the webinar subcommittee, which you heard about. So that's a lot of the same people. And then we also have a couple of people doing social media specifically. We have a volunteer doing the newsletter, and then we have the chapters. And what we're trying to do is have a sort of a chapter liaison, so that every month or so the chapter heads meet all together, and we get all of the great chapter programming and information that's going on the ground in the chapters. We pull it together, feed it over to the programming committee so that everybody can know about what is available, you know, outside of that location. So in other words, if a chapter does a webinar, and there's a great one coming up with the brand new San Francisco chapter, that will be shared as part of the Earth Day events, you know, as a webinar that other people outside of San Francisco can join, and so on. So that's kind of how we're structured now, and what we're working towards.
Yeah, and the social medias, Salim has been great with Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You know, we've got things going out, so there's just a flurry of activities. It's really pretty wonderful.
Also, after sheltering in place, the chapters are starting up. Chicago is in its 5th year of presenting sapling care and poetry, some variation each year on that. San Francisco is in its 2nd year, as we mentioned, but there's a new chapter starting in DC, and there's a long-term chapter in New York City. So the more chapters we have, and we're building community in each city, the more outreach we have through this as well, whether it's streamed live or in person. Building community helps us change faster, helps us get to our goals on a person-to-person level.
Good points.
So what do other people want to share that they're working on?
So I actually have a question, because you're talking about involvement with students. What relationship do you have, or what response have you had to student environmental activism?
Is that a question for Lindsay or for
anybody? I mean,
okay.
I'll take
I mean, we all know what, happened at a Yale Harvard football game a few years ago. I mean, do you completely separate yourselves? Do you reach out? Do you have any kind of, because there's student sustainability activity, but then there's student activism. And obviously there's overlap, but is there any kind of connection, reaching out, response to?
We did some of that early, of course, right as we got going, the pandemic hit. So a lot of it was, sort of virtual. We did do a program during the pandemic with the Yale Student Environmental Group. We've been a little bit, we have not particularly reached out to students on the activism stuff. We've pushed in that private letter, we talked some about that. And we think that Yale has made some progress. But, since 2019, early 2020, I'm sure not as much as some people would like. There are other groups there is a student divestment group, and it has alumni members. So we sort of figured we didn't need to also recreate the wheel. We had a divestment group very briefly early, but it didn't, people stopped coming. So it sort of fell by the wayside.
Can add, just from the Office of Sustainability perspective, as you just saw, we have a number of student research assistant employees that we work with, and some of them are also student activists and members of some of these groups. So our engagement manager, Maria Gutierrez, she's predominantly the one who's overseeing many of these students. And so they will bring concerns and feedback to her. And so she is really kind of a sounding board to hear some of their concerns. But as a university office, we sort of have to take the position of we are in line with what the university states. But what I think of our role as well is really collecting the data and getting this information and sharing it back out. So one other thing I'll put in the chat, I know I'm just sending links left and right, but we do a biannual sustainability literacy survey that we send out to the entire university. This is something that I spearheaded back in 2018. That was our first year of sending it out. And we most recently sent it out in the fall of 2022. This goes out to staff, faculty, and right now it's first and third year Yale College students. And that's kind of to get the time stamp of like, what do you know when you first come into Yale? And then what have you learned a couple of years in? And it assesses knowledge, behaviors, and just like thoughts and ideas about sustainability at Yale specifically. So I share this because there is a segment of feedback that relates to divestment and some of these issues around activism. So there's a lot in the report. I'm happy to answer questions separately about it, but that's sort of the way that I consider us kind of fitting into that larger picture of that activism. It's like we can collect that information and share it out, and that's sort of the role we can play. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Does that answer your question?
If I could share an experience. So this is Phil Falcone. So I interview maybe 4 or 5 perspectives every year. Actually it's great because not every student has environmental activism as part of their portfolio that they want to talk about, but it's real easy to be encouraging, when they do want to talk about that. And it's also real easy just to name drop YBG as a very serious effort at Yale. And I can actually report that there's a freshman in next year's class who has a really significant interest in a career in sustainability. So, and he's admitted. So that's actually going to be very exciting.
To answer your question about whether you answered the question, and I think, I'm just, there was no sort of answer, but as I could imagine, there would be things potentially that would, sort of be official stance, or kind of this is what we do officially, and then as Phil suggested, sort of just how individual members can interact. Well, what Lindsay said is interesting about this survey in terms of students' perspectives, because it's something that you and I talked about. There's the body of knowledge, and then there's the communication of that body of knowledge. And I wondered, if SILC and Yale Blue Green can act as sort of that communication conduit, yeah.
And we have talked, somebody maybe needs to mute on a separate conversation. We have talked about reaching out more to students, and particularly probably those Yale College student environmental groups, but basically really at this point we just haven't had the people power to do it.